אז אני אתן הקדמה קצרה בעברית ויציג את טאניסארו בהיקהו או אג'אהן. אז אג'אהן הוא נזיר כבר יותר מ-40 שנה במסורת היער התאילנדית, והוא התלמיד הישיר של אג'אהן פואנג, שהיה התלמיד הישיר של אג'אהן לי, שהיה אחד מתלמידים הישירים של אג'אהן מן, ומדובר על שושלת ככה ארוכה ומאוד מכובדת של מורים במסורת היער התאילנדית. ואני חושב שדברי הלימוד של אג'אהן הם מיוחדים משתי סיבות. אחד, הוא מאוד בקיא בסוטות הבודהיסטיות של הקאנון הפאלי, והוא מתרגם מאוד פורה, והוא פרסם עשרות ספרים, גם של תרגום וגם של בעצם פרשנות של דהרמה, ואני מוצא את הדרך שהוא מדבר על הדהרמה ומפרש את הדהרמה כיקרה מפז. כן, הדהרמה שלו היא בהירה, הגיונית ונגישה לכולם לדעתי. והסיבה השנייה היא מכיוון שהתרגול האישי שלו, וזה דברים שהוא למד מהמורה שלו, זה תרגול שמבוסס על ריכוז, או במילים אחרות תרגול של ג'אנה. והג'אהן נותן דגש מאוד חזק על סוג כזה של תרגול, גם כדי להפיק עונג ושמחה מתרגול הדהרמה, אבל גם כדי להגיע לתובנות משחררות. והוא מציע את התרגול הזה לכולם, כולל לאנשים שהם לא נזירים, והוא שמה בשבילנו אם נרצה ללכת לכיוון הזה, תרגול של ריכוז ושל ג'אנה. וכשאני שמעתי את דברי הלימוד של אג'אהן בפעם הראשונה, אולי ב-2015, 2016, והתחלתי לתרגל לפיהם, זה לגמרי שינה את החיים שלי. והיו לנו כמה מפגשים עד היום, ובעצם המפגש הזה מסמן את סיום של סדרה של מפגשים, או של קבוצה בעצם, סביב הספר שלו, לב טוב, תודעה טובה, שסיימנו לא מזמן. זה ספר על 10 השלמויות, והמחשבה שלי הייתה לסיים דווקא עם מפגש על נדיבות, כדי לעורר בכם רצון לתרום, כדי שנוציא את הספר לאור. אבל אז כשחשבתי על זה פעמיים, הבנתי שבעצם כדאי יותר להיפגש ולדבר על מה הדהרמה יכולה להציע לנו בזמנים כאלה, בזמנים של מלחמה, בזמנים של קונפליקט, וכל הסטרס, החרדה, הדיכאון, התסכול, הייאוש, וכל המצבים הטבעיים האלה שמתעוררים בזמנים כאלה. ולשמחתי אג'אהן הסכים, וזאת יהיה זה יהיה נושא השיחה היום. Okay, Ajan, I said a bunch of things in Hebrew to introduce you. So we can start with the guided meditation whenever you're ready.
Okay, fine. Close your eyes. Get in a comfortable position. And think thoughts of goodwill. Goodwill is the wish for true happiness. We survive because we can find happiness. We want to find happiness in a way that's responsible, in a way that causes no harm to anyone else. This is why we look for happiness within. And remember what the Buddha said about how people become happy. It's because they get skillful in their actions. So when you're extending goodwill to yourself, you're basically saying, may I understand the causes for true happiness and be willing and able to act on them. And that's a thought you can have without being selfish or egotistical. So extend that thought to yourself. May I be truly happy. And then extend the same thought to others. May they understand the causes of true happiness and be willing and able to act on them as well. Start with people who are close to your heart, your family, your very close friends. May they find true happiness. And then extend those thoughts out in ever-widening circles to people you know well and like. To people you don't like, even though you don't know them so well. to people you're more neutral about, and to people you don't like. Remember that the world would be a much better place if everyone could find true happiness within. Spread thoughts of goodwill to people you don't even know. And not just people, living beings of all kinds. East, west, north, south, above and below, out to infinity. May we all find true happiness in our hearts. Now bring attention to the breath. Take a couple of good, long, deep in and out breaths. And notice where you feel the process of breathing in the body. Because when we speak of breath, it's not so much the air coming in and out through the nose. It's the energy flow in the body that allows the air to come in, allows the air to go out. That's part of the larger breath energy body that extends throughout the nervous system. So wherever it's clearest, wherever you're most sensitive to it, focus your attention there. And then ask yourself if long breathing feels good. If it does, you can keep it up. If not, you can change the rhythm. Make it in short, out short, or in long, out short, in short, out long, heavy, light, fast, slow, deep or shallow. You can experiment for a while to see what rhythm and texture of breathing feels good for the body right now. When you find something that feels good, keep it up until it doesn't feel good anymore, because sometimes the needs of the body will change. So keep adjusting the breath so it feels just right. Energizing if you're feeling tired. Relaxing if you're feeling tense. Soothing and nourishing if you're feeling worn out. If your mind wanders off, just drop that thought and you'll be right back at the breath. This happens 10 times, 100 times. Just don't get discouraged. Just keep dropping the thought, come back. The fact that you can catch yourself is a sign that you're being mindful and alert. And when you come back, reward yourself with a breath that feels especially good. Satisfying the most sensitive parts of the body, the parts that are most sensitive to the breath energy. Now, as the breath gets comfortable, there is a tendency to leave the breath and focus on the comfort, which will last for a little while and then begin to blur out. You lose the foundation for your concentration. So to counteract that tendency, the next step is to be aware of the whole body as you breathe in, the whole body as you breathe out. And a good way to build up to that whole body awareness is to go through the body first, section by section, to familiarize yourself with how the breathing feels in the different parts of the body. A good place to start is down around the navel. Locate that part of the body in your awareness. Watch it for a while as you breathe in, breathe out to see what rhythm of breathing feels good there. And if you notice any tension or tightness in that part of the body, allow it to relax. So that no tension builds up as you breathe in. You don't hold on to any tension as you breathe out. Then move your attention up to the solar plexus, the area right in front of the stomach, and follow the same 3 steps there. 1, locate that part of the body in your awareness. 2, watch it for a while as you breathe in, breathe out to see what rhythm of breathing feels good there. And then 3, if there's any sense of tension or tightness in that part of the body, allow it to relax. Now move your attention up to the middle of the chest and follow the same steps there. Now move your attention to the base of the throat. And now to the middle of the head. As you focus here, try to put not too much pressure on the head because the nerves of the head tend to be overworked as it is. As you breathe in, think of the breath energy coming in not only through the nose, but also through the eyes and the ears. In from the back of the head, down from the top of the head, going deep into the brain. And as you breathe out, think of it radiating out from the head in all directions. Gently working through any patterns of tension you may feel around the eyes, the forehead, the jaws, the back of the neck. And gradually dissolving those patterns of tension away. Now move your attention to the back of the neck, right at the base of the skull. As you breathe in, think of the breath energy entering there from the back, going down through the neck, the shoulders, the arms, out to the tips of the fingers. And as you breathe out, think of it radiating out from all those parts of the body into the air. Now keeping your attention focused at the back of the neck. This time as you breathe in, think of the energy entering there and then going down both sides of the spine, down to the tailbone. And as you breathe out, think of it radiating out from the entire back into the air. Then move your attention to the tailbone. As you breathe in, think of the breath energy entering there and then going down through the hips, the legs, ankles, feet, to the tips of the toes. And then as you breathe out, think of it radiating out from all those parts of the body into the air. Now that completes one cycle in the survey of the body. If you're meditating on your own, you could go through the body as many times as you like, as fast or as slow as you like, until you're ready to settle down. For right now, choose one spot in the body that seems most congenial, most comfortable to focus on. Allow your attention to settle there, and then from that spot to fill the whole body. So you're aware of the whole body breathing in, the whole body breathing out. Allow the breath to find whatever rhythm feels good. Your only responsibility is to maintain this centered but broad awareness. It may have a tendency to shrink, especially on the out breath. So keep reminding yourself each time you breathe in, whole body. You breathe out, whole body. And allow good breath energy to fill the body. This type of awareness is healing for the body, healing for the mind. Because it's still and all around, it provides a good foundation for insights to arise. But for the time being, don't worry about the insights. Just make sure this foundation is strong. I invite you to continue meditating while I give the Dhamma talk. A number of psychologists have asked me why, when the Buddha listed the causes for unskillful behavior, greed, aversion, delusion, he didn't include fear. And the reason is because there are skillful forms of fear, as well as unskillful ones. The unskillful ones are fear mixed with greed, fear mixed with anger, fear mixed with delusion. The skillful forms of fear are those that come when you realize that you have power in your ability to act, to speak, and to think that will have consequences both now and into the future, both for yourself and for others. And you're afraid of abusing that power. Now, this kind of fear the Buddha recommended because he said this is the basis for heedfulness. It's because of this fear that we desire to become skillful, to try to figure out what will be the best use of our powers. And this is something that, on the one hand, we get advice from those who are wise, but on the other hand, we have to be responsible for ourselves, which is why we have to train the mind and take responsibility for our actions. Ajahn Suwat used to make a lot of this point. He said there are so many things the Buddha says are not self, form, feeling, perception, fabrications, consciousness. These things are not self. But then the Buddha says we have our actions and we're the owners of our actions. it's important that we take responsibility for our actions, that we have a strong sense that we are the agents making the decisions for our actions. We're sometimes told that having a sense of separate self is bad, but this is one area where it's actually important. That you take responsibility for your actions. You try to do it in as wise and as compassionate way as you can. This is why the Buddha, when he began his teaching to his son, Rahula, taught him basically how to take responsibility for his actions and how to learn from his mistakes. Before you act, he said, ask yourself, this action that I want to do, what do I expect the results to be? And if you expect any harm, either to yourself or others, you don't do it. In other words, if you're going to learn from your actions, you try to do the best you can. If you don't see any harm, go ahead and do it. While you're doing it, look for the results that are coming up. This action that I am doing, what are the results that are coming in? If you see any harm, you stop. If you don't see any harm, you can continue. When the action is done, you ask yourself, this action that I did, what were the long-term results? And if you see that you caused harm, then you resolve not to repeat that mistake. And you go talk it over with someone who's more experienced on the path to get their advice. If you don't see any harm, then he said, take joy in the fact that you're training well and continue training. But notice each time he has you reflect on your actions. This action I want to do, this action I am doing, this action I have done. The Buddha wants to instill a strong sense of agency, that you are responsible for your actions. Because after all, you're the one who's going to reap the results, the first to reap the results. So you've got to take responsibility. It's in this it's a sense that a strong sense of self is a useful part of the path. Because that enables you to withstand the impulses coming from outside, the influences coming from outside. Because as the Buddha said, the worst thing someone can do to you is not that they might kill you or steal things from you or lie to you. Is that they would get you to kill, they would get you to steal, and they get you to lie, to break the precepts. In other words, you would then become the owner of some very bad actions. So you have to have a strong sense of conviction, what the Buddha said about what is skillful, what is not skillful. And beware of any justifications for breaking the precepts. Sometimes the precepts are broken because we say, well, so-and-so did this to me, I've got to get back. Or I'm afraid so-and-so will do something to me, I've got to prevent it. But the Buddha said, you look at the back and forth of human beings and all beings in the world. And there's no beginning point for the story. You can't say the story began at this point, the story began at that point, because it just goes back. Who knows how many lifetimes. So it's fruitless to keep score. And in this world of ours, this world of samsara, this activity of samsara-ing that we do, there is no end aside from nibbana. Everything else is means. So you have to be very careful about the means, how you go about settling problems, how you go about solving problems. You want to make sure that you don't break the precepts, that you maintain your integrity at all times. So in this sense, you want to have a strong sense of yourself as an independent actor. Because when you leave this life, you're going to go on alone. You came into this life alone, you're going to go alone. And all you have are the results of your actions, the qualities that you build into your mind. You've been reading the book on the perfections. And you realize that this is one way of thinking about how you go through life, gathering up what is valuable. You gather up good qualities in the mind. You're determined that you want to live in a way that's harmless. Find true happiness. And so you realize this involves being determined on discernment, being determined on truth, being determined on relinquishment, being determined on calm or stilling the mind. And the more that you can gather these qualities in your mind, then the better. I remember one time when I was visiting my father. At that point, he lived in Williamsburg, Virginia, which is a couple of hours away from Charlottesville, Virginia, where we had lived before. And in Charlottesville, we'd built a house. And one day we decided, let's go see the house. We drove there. And the people who are living there now were not taking good care of it. Now, this was a house that we not only helped the architect design, but my father put a lot into the actual construction himself. So on the way back, he was feeling kind of depressed. He said, I have nothing to show for my life. And he talked about what happened, his career as a farmer. We'd had to sell the farm. He worked as a government official. As an official, they would propose things to the politicians. The politicians would say no. And so finally left not having accomplished much, he felt. It made me realize if you look for accomplishments outside, you're asking for an accomplishment that depends a lot on what other people do, things that are beyond your own control. But if you look for the qualities you build into your mind, that's something that's in your control. This is the kind of fear that the Buddha recommends, the fear that, okay, I'm not going to make the most of the good qualities I can develop. Because this fear is a fear that comes with a sense of power. Most fear in the world comes with a sense of powerlessness. Things that other people are going to do that you have no control over. And if you feel that the things that they can affect are of value, then as someone said, what fear does, especially the fear of people who have been heedless, is they get stupid. They end up doing things that are actually more detrimental to themselves than they began with. But if you realize, okay, I have some power in my mind. At the very least, I can control my mind. I can develop good qualities in my mind. And through the good qualities in my mind, I can have some influence outside, at least send good energy out. The fear that you might not be able to do that, or you fear that you would choose not to do that, is something that is under your control. Because when you develop the affections, nobody can take them away from you. You can throw them away, which is the danger. But if you don't throw them away, they're yours. So have a strong sense of the value of these good qualities that you're building in your mind. Sometimes you hear warnings against spiritual materialism. The Buddha was a spiritual materialist. In the sense he said, you want to develop wealth in the mind. You want to develop conviction. You want to develop perseverance, mindfulness, concentration, discernment, all these good qualities. The more you develop, the more you build, the stronger your mind will be, the wealthier your mind will be. When you have that sense of inner wealth, then it's a lot easier to share your goodness outside. So have a strong sense of the goodness that you're building, and look for opportunities to build goodness as well. And you want to make sure that your goodness doesn't have to depend on the goodness of others. This is one of the reasons why we extend goodwill without conditions. May all beings be happy. We're not saying, may all beings be happy if they deserve it. May all beings be happy if they're nice to me. We're saying, may all beings be happy, period. That's our intention. Because we want our goodness to be independent. When it's independent, then we can rely on ourselves. As the Buddha said, once you have yourself so that you can rely on it, then you have a refuge that's hard to find. Traditionally, we take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. But what that means is we look to them for examples. This is how they lived their lives to find true happiness. This is how the Buddha taught us to find true happiness. Now it's up to us to take those good examples and then develop them within ourselves. So their qualities, wisdom, compassion, purity, mindfulness, alertness, wisdom, discernment. All these things will become ours, and then we can depend on ourselves. That was the Buddha's last message to his monks after he decided he was going to give up the will to continue living. He said, make an island to yourselves, which is basically practicing right mindfulness, leading to right concentration. That way, he says, you have an island in the midst of the flood. The flood can bear other people away, but you don't get borne away. Again, Ajahn Suwat, he said, with all the people in the world, there's one person we're responsible for, and that's ourselves. We can try to help others, but whether they choose to act in a skillful or unskillful way, ultimately that's beyond our control. But we can focus on making sure that we behave in a skillful way. The problem is all too often we abandon that responsibility. We let our thoughts, words, and deeds get influenced by very unskillful thoughts, words, and deeds from other people. So that's the sort of fear that's a realistic fear, and one that you really should try to cultivate, and then act on it to become heedful. When you become heedful, the Buddha said, you can become consummate in the development of inner wealth. And that way you're safe and well provided for wherever you go. I think that's enough for a talk. Let's have some time for questions.
Thank you, Tanja. So if there are any questions and you feel comfortable speaking in English, you can raise your hands either virtually or physically, and I'll open your mic, or you can open your mic, or you can ask questions in the chat room as well. Any questions? Tanajan, I saw a Dhamma talk you gave recently online, and I think the talk was 20 minutes and then about 2 hours of questions. So it was again, quite a practice in you answering so many questions in such a long time.
Well, I feel I'm responding to what people want to know about.
Yeah.
Also, if the Dharma talk is too long, you forget all of it.
And often you remember the answer to your questions more than the Dhamma talk.
Right. Yeah. No, I found we had a Laotian working with us at the monastery for a while, and if you told him to do 3 things, he could remember all 3. If you told him to do 4 things, he'd forget all 4.
Okay, if there's...
I have a question.
Okay, please, Israel, go ahead.
Hi, thank you very much for the time and the things you mentioned. It's a simple question, and you might have answered it before, but what was the motivation of the Buddha to teach the Dhamma? After all, it's so much against the way people are conditioned, in particular with fear, but in other areas as well. So how he decided to that it's he's gonna teach it to other people?
Well, he had found something really valuable, and the question was, would other people appreciate it? And at first he was discouraged. He looked around, he realized this Dharma that I discovered is very subtle, and it goes against a lot of the ways of the world. And then there was a Brahma who was reading the Buddha's mind. He said, oh my gosh, the world is lost. What are we going to do? So he comes down and he pleads with the Buddha. He says, please teach, there are those with little dust in their eyes. They will benefit. And so the Buddha surveyed the world again, and he saw, yes, there were those who would benefit from the teaching. There would be a lot of people who would not be interested. There were a lot of people who would not care. But he decided, okay, I'll focus on the people who will benefit. And that way he was able to benefit them. Now notice he did this, he was not compelled to teach. This is one of the points that comes up again and again. Once you become fully enlightened, you have no debts to anybody. But he had the energy, he had the intelligence, he had the ability. And I think he realized it would be a waste if he didn't help. So that was it basically came down to compassion. And talking about the difficulties, I don't know if you've ever read the Vinaya, which is the collection of monks' rules. But you can see even among the monks and the nuns who lived with him, there were just lots of problems day after day after day. Somebody was doing something stupid, and he would have to legislate. And then they would try to find ways to wiggle around the rules. And then he would teach people out of compassion, and they'd argue with him. So it wasn't an easy thing to be a Buddha. But he had the strength, he had the ability, so he thought that would be a good use of his strength.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Can I ask something?
Sure.
First, thank you again for meeting with us and taking the time. I really appreciate everything you say. but I don't know how much you know about what's going on in Israel at the moment. I mean, and what happened during the last year since this October 7th. And I must admit it threw me away. I mean, it's like, yeah, don't kill, don't do anything wrong to other people. But how should you react when they're killing you and torturing you and burning you alive and doing all sorts of things? And there's an atmosphere in Israel that a lot of young people want to enroll to the army, to combative units, to defend the country or revenge. I don't believe in revenge, but I mean, everyone has the right to defend themselves. And truly, I'm totally confused. I'm walking this path for a long time, but I don't know what to think anymore. I mean, in front of this cruelty and real threat, I mean, to human life. So I would like to be a pacifist. I would like, but reality is not that simple. Can you have some words of wisdom how to live in such a reality of war?
Okay, well, you have to decide for yourself what you're going to be responsible for. And you can say, in my sphere of my life, I'm going to try to be as harmless as I can. And then decide there are things that I may have to lose if I'm going to be harmless. And this is where you have to be willing to make some sacrifices. Because the things that you save, say by killing it or stealing or whatever, eventually you're going to lose them anyhow. If you don't lose them now, you're going to lose them later. But with your virtue, you don't have to lose. That's yours. And so there are many examples where in the Janaka tales, the tales of the Buddha's previous lifetimes, where he was, he did sacrifice his life to maintain his virtue. Which of course requires, if you're going to be a pacifist, you have to be a smart pacifist to figure out, well, how can I not harm others and still not have to lose my life, still not have to lose things that are real valuable to me. If we spend as much time trying to think of intelligent ways of finding peace in a difficult world as we do just lashing back, we'd have many more alternatives to us. But again, you have to decide what's important to you. Because ultimately, when it comes down to it, you will take your virtue with you, and you'll take your vice and the things you've done with you, good or bad. Whereas all these other things you have to leave behind. It's one of the reasons why we have a contemplation every day. I'm subject to aging, illness, and death. I'm subject to separation. All I have is my actions. So you want to make sure that you act in responsible ways. You may say, I'm in America, I'm a lot safer than you are right now. I've been in dangerous places myself. When I lived in Thailand, the communists were just a few miles away. So it's always that possibility. But we decide, okay, we live by our virtue. That's how we survive. That's how our goodness survives. That's how we survive as human beings.
But even if, let's say, I'm willing to sacrifice my life, I mean, there is a larger responsibility for other people, for the society I live in. I mean, perhaps I'm mistaken, but I think there was a story again from the Jekta that the Buddha himself killed someone on a ship. He told the captain he's about to kill everyone on the ship or something like that, and he said, I'm willing to take on myself this bad karma in order to save everyone else. Perhaps I'm mistaken. I think I read it somewhere. So again, it's more complicated than that. That even if I say, okay, I'll sacrifice myself, but and to sacrifice for what? I mean, if someone is full of hatred and want to kill me, and I mean, is it just okay to let this person kill us? I mean, because he's full of hatred? I don't know.
Well, one thing, that Jataka tale was a Mahayana Jataka tale.
Okay, fair.
And secondly, the Buddha says, even if people are sewing you up in little pieces, you have to have goodwill for them. Now, goodwill basically means doesn't mean may you be happy doing whatever you're doing. It means may you understand what wrong you're doing and realize that you're harming yourself. If you can have that attitude towards people who are harming you, you can talk to them in ways that they might be surprised that you are talking to them in that way with that much compassion. Just the attitude, the sort of the energy that you are coming forth with would surprise them. And you might be surprised by an influence that could have.
There was no talking. There is no talking at the moment.
I know there's no talking at the moment. That's the problem. Okay, but again, it's important that you take care of your responsibility. You're responsible for your actions, your words, your deeds. Make sure they're skillful. And whatever you have to lose in order to be skillful, say, okay, it's worth the price.
Yeah, but you know, the question I keep asking myself, what is skillful in this situation?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because even if we take it in a much smaller scale, there's a bully, there's someone, I mean, just let this person do whatever they want. I mean,
no, you don't let them do whatever they want. You find skillful ways to stop them from being unskillful. And we spend so much time thinking about other things. This is something we should really plan out ahead. If so-and-so did this, what would be the skillful approach? If so-and-so did that, what would be the skillful response? You can spend your time
meditating. An example for a skillful action in this case?
Okay, well, they say that some of the best comedians from New York are the ones who grew up in really tough neighborhoods. And they learned that the way to deal with bullies is to make them laugh. That's just one example.
And Sarit, I think maybe there's the distinction between your personal actions and actions that are other people's actions, or action in the level of state. And basically, I think if you're a practitioner and that's your practice, just you make sure your own personal choices are as harmless as possible. And it takes a great degree of conviction, Ajan.
Yeah.
If that's the amount of conviction that you have, then like the Buddha said, they can maybe saw you without reacting.
I mean, there are cases in the canon of people who were threatening to kill monks, and the monks were able to be calm, maintain their calm, and maintain their composure, and speak compassionately with them. And it surprised the bullies so much that they stopped. So take that into consideration. And again, this is a decision you have to make, how much you're willing to sacrifice. But I just want to say that there's so little discussion in the world of being willing to sacrifice for things that are of more value, the quality of your mind, that I really want to state that forcefully, that the quality of your mind will be your most valuable possession in the long term.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Just against so much evil. I mean,
I know.
I totally understand and agree with what you're saying. It just, how do you stop evil? I mean,
well, did the Buddha stop evil? He taught the people he could teach.
And
thank you.
so, okay. And we can take, Tanajan, maybe another question or two.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I would like to ask a question if I can.
Sure.
Hi, thank you. If I understood what you said, you were talking about fear and the way it stops us and I wonder if you can elaborate. Maybe also about when it protects us and when it's stopping us to fulfill ourselves, if that's what you meant.
Yes, well, there's many times we do things out of fear and we end up creating more difficulties and putting ourselves in positions of long-term harm. Again, it has to do with what you feel is your most valuable possession. If you feel that the possession of good qualities in your mind is your most valuable possession, then you say, okay, I have to be willing to let go of the other things that would prevent me from doing what is skillful. It's one of the reasons why we meditate and we contemplate our attachments. And we realize, okay, if I held on to this particular attachment, I could do a lot of unskillful things. Maybe I should learn how to put it into some perspective. And remember that things do have a very long-term consequence. There was one time when the Buddha was talking about people who have memories of previous lifetimes. And he was saying those who have a memory of 40 aeons, I mean, that's 40 universes. It's a short memory, to say nothing of our memories. And then he said he was able to look back much longer than that. He could see that by holding to the precepts, you never harmed yourself in the long term. There may be short-term harm, but the things you lose were not as much value as the things that you gained through your holding to the precepts. So it takes a lot of conviction to hold to that kind of long-term view, which is why the Buddha spent so much energy getting that teaching out into the world, because it's, as someone said just now, it goes against a lot of the currents in the world. But the way that if you follow the ways of the world, everything just goes down, down, down. You have to say, oh, I'm not, other people may be going down. I'm not going down. I have my integrity. I want to maintain my integrity. And that's going to be your most valuable possession. And in the course of karma, the people that we love, we're going to be meeting them again and again and again. And if we hold to our integrity, we tend to meet them in good circumstances. So even though we may lose them now, the fact that we maintain our integrity means that at some point in the future, we'll find them again. Otherwise, we're going to lose them anyhow. We may not meet them again in good circumstances. Does that answer your question?
Some way. Thank you.
Then, if I may, first of all, thank you very much. I hope it will be clear. I wonder how what you said about the personal responsibility coexists with the principle of anatta.
Okay, well, the teaching on anatta does not say there is no self. The Buddha never said there was a self or there was no self. He simply said our self is an activity. It's a strategy. We identify with certain things and disidentify with other things so we can figure out where we're going to look for our happiness and how. And he's basically saying, we'll learn to use this tendency we already have to divide the world into self and not self, and learn how to use that more skillfully, more consistently. And so in the beginning, you hold on to your practice of virtue, you hold on to your practice of concentration, discernment. These things you hold on to, and you develop a strong sense of self around this that is, one, feels competent and responsible and able to do this. Two, will benefit from doing it. And then three, is able to reflect on your actions so that you can keep improving them. Those three senses of self are important. In fact, they're necessary on the path. Now, when you get to the end of the path, you realize that the last attachment you're going to have to let go of will be to that sense of self. But by that time, you don't need it anymore because you found the true happiness. And your sense of self and your way of dividing the world into self and not self was a strategy to gain happiness. When you've gained the happiness, then you can let both strategies go. So it's basically the sense of self is a value judgment. This is worth holding on to right now. Now, it may come a time where it's not worth holding on to anymore. But right now, these are the things to hold on to. Ajahn Chah gives a good example. He says, you're coming back from a market. You've got a banana in your hand. And someone says, why do you have the banana? You say, I'm going to eat it. He says, are you going to eat the peel too? No. Why are you holding the peel? And Ajahn Chah says, with what are you going to answer him? And his response was two things. One, you have to answer him out of desire, i.e. the desire to come up with a good answer. So desire has its role. And then two, you tell him the time hasn't come yet. If I'd let go of the peel now, the banana turns to mush in my hands. So I hold on to the peel. When I no longer need the peel, then I throw it away.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. We have time for one more question.
Yes, thank you, John. There's maybe just a quick personal question. You hear about a lot of non-dualism, and basically how I understand non-dualism meditation is not doing the activity of selfing, right? Stopping this I-making, the Buddha is talking about, this activity of having the subjective feel of self. And that can be nice, and it can be really freeing, but that's not the goal of the path. And
it's not the goal. As the Buddha said, even that sense of a non-dual consciousness is constructed. It is fabricated. We're looking for something that is not fabricated. So just because you have a non-dual experience doesn't mean that you found you found the goal. You're basically attained a really pleasant state of concentration.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's a
What
nice.
you're looking for something that is totally unfabricated, something that's totally outside of space, outside of time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Ajahn. So it can be a nice stop on the way, but it's not the end goal.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and there's a clarification from Asaf here, who is asking, does long-term, and you call it deep view, does long-term mean this lifetime or other lifetimes? And
both.
You see, this is both.
And sometimes you have to make sacrifices in this lifetime but you'll be amply repaid in next lifetimes.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is we don't have that long a memory, so we forget what we've done. And when the good results, we're living off the good results of our past actions, and we don't know what we did to become human beings, but it made a lot of effort.
Mm-hmm.
So try to make sure that you maintain your status as a human being. Keep the 5 precepts.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Mm-hmm.
So, Ajahn, it's been a few meetings now when I finished working on the last book, and I think I'll take a break from translating for a while.
Okay.
But thank you very much for your generosity this past few years, and all of your time and energy in general, teaching the Dhamma.
Yeah, I've been happy to help.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Okay. Be well.